A container ship leaves Los Angeles for Shanghai fully loaded. Every slot taken, boxes stacked 9 high above deck. Almost 3 out of every 4 of those boxes contain nothing at all. This is not a mistake, and it is not unusual. In May 2026, the busiest port in the Western Hemisphere shipped out 107,000 loaded containers and 283,000 empty ones. Nearly 3 empties for every box with something in it, on purpose, at full freight cost per slot. Globally, the picture is almost as strange. Measured by distance traveled, more than 4 in every 10 container miles are now empty boxes being carried somewhere. The industry spends $15 to $20 billion a year moving them. Cranes, trucks, ship slots, port fees, all of it spent shipping air. And the number is not shrinking as the industry gets smarter. It is growing. 7 years ago, empty movements were 3 million boxes a month. Today it is 4.5 million. The most optimized logistics system ever built ships more nothing every year. So what does a company gain by paying to move 60 million empty boxes across the oceans? And what happens to world trade if it ever stops? A shipping container is capital equipment, a steel asset the carrier owns or leases, built for years of ocean crossings and priced accordingly. Like any asset, it earns in exactly one state: full, moving, on its way to somewhere a customer paid to send it. Every other state costs money. An empty box in a depot pays storage by the day. An empty box on a truck pays the driver and the diesel. And a container spends a remarkable share of its life in the costly states. On average, nearly half its existence idle, sitting in yards, waiting for work. Now put that asset in the wrong country. China exports vastly more containerized goods than it imports. America and Europe import vastly more than they export. So every month, hundreds of thousands of boxes arrive full at ports like Los Angeles and Rotterdam, get unloaded, and are then sitting on the wrong side of the planet from the factories that need to fill the next ones. The carrier has 3 options, and 2 of them are bad. Leave the box in California, and it generates storage fees indefinitely, while Shanghai runs short of equipment. Build new boxes in Asia instead, and you are buying steel to duplicate an asset you already own, while the originals keep accumulating in a country that cannot use them. And both Rotterdam and Los Angeles have described the growing pileup of empties as an operational strain in its own right, or pay to sail the box home empty. Sailing it home is the cheapest bad option, which is why it wins. That is the structural core, and the industry's own analysis puts numbers on it. Roughly 2/3 of all empty repositioning comes from trade imbalance, unavoidable, baked into the shape of world commerce. The remaining third comes from the carrier's own inefficiencies, where a line's import customers and export customers simply do not line up port by port. There is a second mismatch stacked on top of the first, and it is subtler. Even where trade is balanced in volume, it is not balanced in equipment. Consumer imports, furniture, appliances, electronics, travel overwhelmingly in big 40-foot dry boxes. Export flows lean toward 20-footers and refrigerated containers. A port can hold exactly the right number of containers and still have all the wrong kinds, which generates repositioning even where the trade statistics look even. So the empty box on that westbound ship is not idle. It is being returned to work. It earns in one direction and travels at pure cost in the other, and that costly return leg is built into the price of operating in a world where making and consuming happen on different continents, which sets up the question the whole industry has quietly organized itself around. If the box has to go back anyway, if that slot on the westbound ship is sailing regardless, what would you pay to put anything in it? The answer is, surprisingly little, and that low price has quietly created entire trades. Freight on a major lane is not one market but 2. The eastbound leg from Asia, the head haul, carries the electronics, the furniture, the clothing, and it is priced like the scarce thing it is. The westbound leg back is priced like what it is too, a ship that is sailing anyway, with slots that would otherwise carry empty steel. For a carrier, almost any revenue on that leg beats none. Cheap backhaul space changes what can profitably cross an ocean. Consider what it normally takes for a good to be worth exporting. The freight has to be small relative to the value of the cargo. But when the freight approaches the cost of moving an empty box, a cost the carrier was bearing regardless, things with very little value per ton can suddenly afford the voyage. That is how some of America's largest containerized exports came to be its own discards: waste paper, scrap plastics, scrap metal, collected in the country that consumes and shipped west in boxes that had to return anyway to Asian markets that use them as industrial raw material. Old cardboard cannot justify a Pacific crossing at head haul rates. At the price of a slot that would otherwise carry nothing, it can, and it does, in enormous volume. The westbound trade is, In meaningful part, a market for things that are only worth moving because the box was leaving anyway. So the backhaul market soaks up some of the empty problem. What it cannot fill still amounts to 4.5 million boxes a month, and the industry attacks that remainder with a family of operational fixes. Carriers rent each other's boxes through interchange platforms, so a line short of equipment in Shanghai borrows a competitor's local surplus instead of sailing its own boxes across an ocean. Truckers arrange street turns, refilling an import box with export cargo directly instead of hauling it back to the depot empty. The savings per avoided move run to hundreds of dollars, and they are real. But the industry's own consultants have measured the ceiling on all of this, and it is low. Roughly a third of the empty repositioning bill traces to inefficiency, the mismatches inside carriers' own networks that clever coordination can genuinely fix. The other two-thirds traces to the trade imbalance itself. And against that share, the toolkit is empty. No software reallocates a box out of a structural imbalance, because the imbalance is the reason the box is where it is. A platform can make sure the right empty sails back to Asia. It cannot change the fact that an empty must sail, which means the $20 billion problem divides into a third that is being competed away, slowly, by startups and platforms, and two-thirds that is not a logistics problem at all. It is a mirror of the world economy. As long as one side of the ocean makes and the other side buys, the boxes will ride home empty, unless, of course, you could make the boxes themselves smaller for the ride. The idea has existed for decades, and it sounds like the obvious answer. If the box must travel empty, fold it. The most developed version comes from a company spun out of Delft University in the Netherlands in 2008. Their container, the 4FOLD, is a certified 40-foot box whose walls fold inward with a forklift's help, collapsing the unit to a quarter of its height. 4 folded containers stack into the footprint of one standard box. 4 empties become 1 slot on the ship, 1 lift at the crane, 1 space on the truck. Serious people took it seriously from the start. The first prototype was co-funded by CMA-CGM, one of the largest carriers in the world. The European Union put the project into its flagship research program and financed a production line. In 2013, it became the first foldable 40-footer ever to pass full international certification, the standards every working container must meet for ships, rail, and terminals. Consumer giants including Procter & Gamble ran trials. More than 15 carriers and shippers tested it across 60 ports. And the chairman of Maersk, one of the world's largest shipping lines, described foldable containers as the dream of the shipping industry. That was years ago. The dream has still not become mainstream, and the industry analysis that tracks the company states the reason plainly: higher upfront costs, and hesitancy to change a business model built entirely around the standard box. Start with the upfront cost. A foldable container costs 3 to 4 times as much as a conventional one, and the conventional container is extraordinarily cheap for what it does. It is a welded steel rectangle with doors, mass-produced in Chinese factories, and that crushing cheapness is a large part of what made global containerization possible at all. Any replacement is competing with one of the most cost-optimized objects in industrial history. Then there is the fold itself. Folding and unfolding takes minutes, a forklift, and trained hands at both ends of every empty journey. That sounds trivial. It is not, because the standard container's entire genius is the absence of handling. Nothing is ever done to it except filling, moving, and emptying. Every fold inserts a small industrial operation into a system whose economics were built on having none. And there is a quieter problem underneath both. The savings from folding accrue on the empty leg, but as the backhaul market shows, the empty leg is already the cheap leg. The premium box spends its extra cost attacking the discounted half of the round trip, while the expensive loaded half gains nothing from the folding mechanism it is carrying around. So the fix that would shrink the empty problem is held back by the same economics that created the problem. Empty transport is cheap enough that a box costing 3 to 4 times more struggles to pay for itself by eliminating it. The company's own founder has said he hopes foldables become the standard in about 20 years. Meanwhile, the empty containers keep sailing, in growing numbers, and their growth is not random noise. Plotted over time, the empty box share moves with something much larger than shipping. Here is the pattern the empty boxes trace, if you step back far enough to see it. Before the pandemic, empty containers amounted to around 22% of loaded volumes. By January 2026, they had reached 28%. Measured in miles traveled, the empty share has climbed from roughly a third of full container miles to 42%. The consultancy that tracks this, Sea Intelligence, working from industry-wide container statistics, found empty repositioning up 50% in 7 years. Those statistics are a portrait of the world economy. Drawn in steel boxes. Every empty container is the physical record of a transaction that happened in one direction only. Something was made in one place, bought in another, and nothing came back. Economists call the accumulation of those one-way flows a trade imbalance, and it is usually discussed as an abstraction, a percentage of GDP, a political talking point, a number on a chart. At the ports, it is not abstract. It is 283,000 empty boxes leaving Los Angeles in a single month, against 107,000 full ones. You can stand at a terminal fence and watch the imbalance go past, 3-to-1, box by box, which is why the trend matters beyond the $20 billion. The empty share is rising because the imbalances themselves are widening. American containerized exports have declined year on year in 6 of the last 9 months, while import volumes have stayed far higher. Rotterdam's head of containers said it directly: more empties moving through the system is not a good sign for the economy. The boxes are a barometer, and the reading is drifting. None of this has a fix, because none of it is a malfunction. The carriers are behaving rationally. The backhaul market wrings out what value exists. The foldable box waits for economics that may never arrive. The system is doing exactly what it was built to do: move goods from where they are made to where they are bought, and quietly absorb the cost of the silence coming back. So the next time you see a container ship on the horizon, fully loaded, consider the odds. Depending on which way it is sailing, a third of what it carries, or nearly all of it, may be nothing at all.